Um, I want to welcome everyone to this webinar session today. This is a webinar session between the Educational African Scholars Global Connect and Interstride. So we want to welcome everyone. My name is Stanley Peter Anukocha. I am the founder of Educational African Scholars Global Connect and then the chairman of the board. Um, we at Educational African Scholars Global Connect, what we do is to assist young people from different African countries gain admissions and scholarships in different universities here in the US. And we are happy that last year, after we held a webinar session that is similar to what we are currently doing today. And that webinar session assisted a lot of young people. And from our records, we had over 20 of them arrive US last year. And they are all in different universities, currently studying their different programs. So we are happy that what we are doing is actually yielding results. And that motivates us so much to do more for the young people in Africa. We welcome everyone here. And I have my colleagues here at this program. I have Obina, I have Good Luck, and then I have Kunkaja. So I will leave them to introduce themselves one after the other before we hand over the microphone to Alison and other members of Interstride to continue from where we stopped. So over to you, my colleagues from Eduafric. Maybe
Hello,
Obi, you want to start
everyone.
first? Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Obinna Franklin Ezeibekwe, and I am one of the board members at Eduafric. So first of all, I want to welcome everyone to this special meeting. So the idea behind this meeting is to um, continue to educate you, our members, on how to um, apply to schools in the US and other countries abroad, secure funding, and then successfully relocate to the country of your study. I also want to thank Interstride for accepting to collaborate with us to bring this important webinar to you guys. As you guys know, we last summer we presented some webinars where we presented important information on how you can navigate the study abroad process. So today we are collaborating with an international organization in the United States to also give you guys more knowledge and resources. So at the end of this meeting, Interstride will be sharing important resources to you guys. And I encourage and advise you guys to utilize those resources because they will be of great help to you guys. And then feel free to ask questions and also connect with them and keep and remain posted with the information they'll be giving to you guys today. So once again, I welcome you guys and good luck in your application process.
Yeah, welcome everyone. And it's so good to have Interstride join us to sensitize people around the world about the world of scholarships and admissions. Sadly, you won't see my face, but it is good for climate change. I think it's obviously because of the technical stage, technical issues back end, but it's all good. I think my colleagues have said everything, so I look forward to an interesting discussion. And also, it would be nice to also hear June as well. Yeah, thank you.
June, you want to go?
Hello, everyone. My name is June, and I would just like to thank you all for joining this event, my fellow board members and also our colleagues from Interstride. I am especially excited for this event because in the times where we are presently, I'm sure many of you are aware, we face some challenges with international student admissions. Australia has imposed a student cap, Canada as well. There are also talks, for example, with UK, also influencing both the visa processes, also university admissions. And so, in this context, the university recruitment from the United States has remained quite constant, and I think it presents us with a unique opportunity, which our colleagues from Interstride will be able to help you not only access, but also put you in a position where you can leverage this to the best possible potential given the global context. So I hope that all of you will pay attention, will take notes relevant to your specific circumstances, and will learn from this and grow and also share the information with colleagues that may not have been able to attend this event. So I am very excited, and I hope that you all will enjoy what we have in store for you today.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for introducing yourselves. I must confess to the members of Interstride that in the audience, we have people, students from different countries in Africa. We have people from Nigeria, Ghana, Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya, call it anywhere from different countries in Africa. So you have a diverse people you're going to talk to today. And I'm very happy, even someone from UK and also from China. Yeah, Cameroon too, they are all here. So I'm happy to introduce all of them to you. And you are going to have a diverse students who are actually yearning to come to US. So thank you guys for this. And then at this point, I have to hand over the microphone to Interstride to continue from here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the introduction. We are very happy to be here. And I love that we have such a diverse group of attendees here. So today's webinar, we will go for about 45 minutes and then leave time at the end for Q&A. So if you have any questions that you want to write down in the meantime, you can do that, but we'll only address it at the end of the webinar. And we will make the recording available to you. So if you missed anything, if you're taking notes, know that you'll have a copy of this presentation as well. So today's webinar, I'll be presenting with Allison. We are going to talk about US university admissions. We're going to touch a little bit on undergrad and grad and share a little bit about the process and expert tips. So just to introduce myself first, my name is Judy. I work at Interstride. I've been at Interstride for about 3 years now. And a little bit of personal background. I'm originally from Taipei, Taiwan, and I grew up in China, going to international school. After international school, I went to the US to pursue my undergraduate studies. I went to Tufts University in the Boston area and studied anthropology. And ever since then, I've worked at US-based startups. So I've definitely moved around a little bit myself. I see, Stanley, you mentioned there's someone from China, so I lived there for about 15 years of my life. And one of my housemates and one of my close friends from Tufts actually is from Botswana. So there's an African connection there too. So that's about me, and then I'll hand it off to Allison.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have this size group, especially this day of the week, and to have such a diverse group from all over the world. So my name is Allison Hergetz, and I've spanned many different roles in my career, but primarily have spent most of my time professionally in the admissions space, working at various selective universities in the United States, including Villanova and Brandeis University, also outside of Boston, and overseeing international undergraduate admissions at those schools. So I have visited many of your countries. I've certainly read applications probably from all of your countries. I've read applications probably from over 100 different countries in my career. So I'm very familiar with the international student landscape, and hopefully I'll be able to share some helpful tips with you today as you embark on your admissions journey.
Great. And so today our presentation will be broken into 3 sections. First, we will have a broad introduction to the US education system. Second, we'll talk a little bit about the admissions process and admissions components. And then lastly, we'll talk a bit more about the US education experience and what that experience will get you after graduation. So those are the 3 sections. Before we begin, I just want to do a very quick poll. to understand a bit more about every one of you. So I am going to go to polls and quizzes. I am going to launch this poll here. And what we want to ask, what we want to understand is just what degree are you actively pursuing right now? Is it master's, PhD, or undergrad? Some of you might be thinking about all 3 degrees, so you are able to select all 3 as well. But just to get a sense of where to focus more of our time on. Great, I see responses filing in. And I'm seeing that the vast majority are looking at graduate school, primarily master's, but PhD is closely behind. So great. We do have some slides on navigating undergraduate admissions, but we'll spend less time there since that's a little bit less of you guys. Great, thank you. Awesome. So I'll end the poll now and we'll go back to the presentation. I'll share the result. Great, awesome. And then I am going to click out of the poll. Give me a moment to click out of this and I will go back to the presentation. Awesome, cool. So let's dive into part 1, Introduction to the US Education System.
All right, so I'm assuming that, you know, given the results of that poll that was just launched, probably most of you are in different stages of your journey and maybe have a different level of familiarity with the US system. You know, the one thing I will say in my experience working with international students over the years, I understand how overwhelming the US education system could be, especially when you're coming from outside of the United States, especially when in some cases, maybe you've never visited the US, maybe you don't even know anyone who's gone to the United States for school before, right? So there's, it can be overwhelming, but we're here to help hopefully and kind of share some tips with you. So we're going to first talk about how you might start when you're choosing a graduate program. And we'll also touch upon undergraduate as well. But a couple of different things you're probably thinking about if you're looking at doing your master's or your PhD in the United States. And the way that I like to think about the admission process is that it's kind of a funnel, right? And so at the beginning, you want to cast a really wide net. And you want to look at a variety of different types of programs, different institutions, because you don't know what the outcome is going to be, right? You're probably going to apply to more than one program, right? And you want to be in a place where you have options. And that holds true at the graduate level as well as the undergraduate level. So in the case of graduate admissions, probably one of the primary factors you're going to be thinking about or you should be thinking about is what you want to study. And that's really the advantage that you have at the graduate level is you probably know that already, right? So you know what types of academic programs that you're looking at. And there's a variety of different types of programs that you consider, certainly both at the master's level and the PhD level. But typically for graduate education, you might be narrowing down your list in a lot of different ways, not just by looking at the academic program, but there's probably also some faculty members that maybe you have in mind that you've read about. Maybe you know someone else who's done a program with them, you've heard about them in your social circles, right? So that will help you narrow down the list. You're probably also thinking potentially about research opportunities. So doing research with that faculty member, the level of research that you'll be able to get involved with in your graduate program. And then, of course, in the United States, there's also different types of programs. You might be able to do singularly master's or PhD program, but there's also joint degree programs where you can do them together. That also holds true at the undergraduate level. There's some programs out there that are 5-year bachelor's and master's degree programs, right? So you can do 2 degrees really in kind of an accelerated period of time. And, you know, there's both pluses and minuses to that when you're thinking about the length of a program. So, these programs really can be from anywhere from 1 to 7 years when you're thinking about graduate programs. Some students want to choose the shortest program possible because it's the most effective, but there's also advantages to choosing programs that are longer. For instance, if you want to be able to stay over the summer to do a research opportunity or to work, right? You have the advantage of doing that when you're in a longer program. One of the things that we'll circle back and talk a little bit more about later is that there's this, something called STEM designation when you're talking about programs in the United States. And that really primarily relates to work authorization and the types of opportunities that will be available to you to work from your program. So Judy will touch upon that a little bit again, but I just wanted to introduce that concept. And there's different types of programs when you're thinking about STEM designation. Some of them are kind of no-brainers, if you're thinking about a biology program or engineering, for instance, but then you might also be surprised that a lot of MBA programs, for instance, might also have a STEM designation because of the content that's included in those programs. So just wanted to introduce that concept to you. And we'll talk about some other factors to consider if you want to go to the next slide, Judy. So when you're thinking about the types of programs that you might be interested in the United States, you probably are going to be thinking about rankings. There's pluses and minuses to that. There's a ton of different rankings out there. We understand at the graduate level that may be particularly important. In some cases, you're in situations where you're looking at employers that may only hire graduates from certain programs or from certain schools, right? So rankings can be important, but I would encourage you to look beyond rankings when you're thinking about programs. So obviously research opportunities, also the opportunity to work either on campus or connected to your program is really important. When you're thinking about that hands-on experience, that is the type of thing that employers are looking for when they're going to be hiring graduates, right? They're looking for that hands-on experience. So you want to be able to explore what types of opportunities are available to get that hands-on experience. And all of these factors here, obviously, the schools that you're looking at can be a great resource. I would encourage you to reach out to folks in graduate admissions of the program that you're applying to, check out the websites. But there's also a lot of resources out there on the internet as well that you can look at, and you can get statistics on things like career outcomes. If your school you're looking at is an Interstride partner school, we provide a lot of information about career outcomes directly to students, right? So there's all kinds of data out there. Use it to your advantage because that's really what's most important when you're looking at schools. You want to know outcomes, right? And what type of career opportunities are going to be available to you once you graduate. And then of course, things like, location are important. So do you want to be in a major city or maybe suburban area or rural area, or it doesn't matter. Affordability is a big factor, right? And we'll talk about financial aid in just a minute, but all of these things, I like to say, it's kind of like a big jigsaw puzzle, right? So you're trying to kind of get a sense of what school and what program is going to be the best fit for you. And you have to put all these pieces together to kind of figure out what's going to be the best fit school for you, right? So it is can be a very long process when you're trying to decide what program is going to be the best fit. And if you want to go to the next slide, Judy, we'll talk just briefly about undergrad programs. I think we had a small handful of folks in here. So the same types of factors that you're going to be looking at the graduate level are pretty similar at the undergraduate level. There's a couple of minor differences. Obviously, in the United States, a bachelor's degree is typically a 4-year program. And you can still pick a major, you can pick a minor. You can pick multiple majors and minors depending on the school. And so there's lots of different options that are available to you. I think some of the differences at the undergraduate level, things you might want to think about, certainly, extracurricular activities can be really important. So you may want to look at clubs and activities, what types of extracurriculars are available, what percentage of the student body participates in those activities. Internships can be really important. There's some schools where, you know, over 80% of students will do at least one internship, and other schools where there's not a lot of internships, right? Opportunities. So that might be something you want to think about. And then, of course, access to research opportunities as well. When I worked at Villanova, we had a program specifically for first-year students to get involved directly with research with a faculty member on campus, which is pretty rare, right? So if you're interested in research, definitely seek out programs, seek out universities that are going to allow you as an undergraduate to have access to those research opportunities. All right, so that was just a very, very quick overview of some factors that you may want to consider when you are kind of narrowing down your college and your program list. And now we'll kind of talk about the next step in the process, which is the actual application process, right? And applying to these universities and to these programs. So we'll cover both graduate and undergraduate, but we'll spend a little bit more time on the graduate space. There are some similarities between both of these processes, but the one thing that I would say is the largest commonality is that you really, I can't stress this enough, you really need to look at the specific program that you are applying to and what their individual components are. Especially at the graduate level in the United States, unfortunately, there's not a real standardization of the admission process. So the components that you need to apply, in fact, can even, will certainly vary by university and by college, but they will likely also vary within that university, depending on what program you're applying to. So if you're applying to a mechanical engineering program, it's quite likely that the application components, what you need to submit with your application, and the deadlines are probably going to be different than a student who's applying to a program, for instance, in the School of Business. And that just has to do with how graduate programs are kind of set up in institutions in the United States. They tend to be kind of siloed. So I really can't stress this enough. Please check with your individual schools and your individual programs for what components they require. But some things that tend to be the most common, depending on what school you're looking at, you may or may not be required to submit standardized testing. And the standardized test that's required is going to depend on what program you're interested in, right? So GRE tends to be probably the most widely administered and widely accepted. But of course, if you're going to law school, most law schools are going to require the LSAT. So different tests, different program, right? So check with the program that you're going to be applying to. Another commonality tends to be most schools are going to require some type of English language proficiency testing, with a caveat that in a lot of cases that will be waived. If you are coming from a particular background, if you're coming from another program, for instance, maybe if you've done your bachelor's in the United States, where you've been obviously in a school where English is the primary language of instructions. So there's a lot of caveats to that, but if you do need to meet that school's English language proficiency requirements, there are tests like TOEFL, IELTS. There's a test called Duolingo that's becoming more popular now. So you will need to plan ahead and make sure that you have taken that test before you submit your application. In terms of other credentials you need to submit, transcripts, one of the policies that can really vary depending on institution with relation to transcripts is whether or not the school requires official or unofficial transcripts. So sometimes the school is going to require that you submit official transcripts directly from your high school potentially, or from your undergraduate program. Sometimes they'll accept them unofficially if you have a copy, and then once you're admitted and you decide to attend, you might have to send the original. There's also some schools that require outside third parties. There's a lot of different companies out there that will do transcript evaluations, and they'll require you to submit that with your application. So just check the requirements for that. And then, of course, there's a lot of other items that they may consider: the graduate level, personal statements, resumes, potentially work experience, letters of recommendation. All those can be important. At the undergraduate level, I would say the main difference has to do with the other things that they look at. So things like extracurricular activities. Sometimes there are essays that are more specific to that institution or to your background that you may need to submit. And then in the United States, there is something called the Common Application, which is accepted by, I think, well over 4,000 different universities now in the US. And it's kind of a way of standardizing the application. And so you're able to submit the Common Application and then submit, in a lot of cases, a supplement for that particular school that you're interested in to apply. So that's just kind of a quick snapshot of that. And then if you want to go to the next slide. So one of the primary questions, and I will say, you know, having worked in admissions, you know, directly in international admissions for, you know, well over 12 years, one of the primary concerns and the primary questions that I got as someone working with international students in admissions was about financing and how am I going to pay for my education. And as you probably know, the United States tends to have among the most expensive options for higher education in the world. So there's no sugarcoating it. Unfortunately, it is what it is, but there are a variety of different types of options depending on the program and the university that you're considering that may help you offset the cost of that program. So at the graduate level, you know, there's different levels of funding depending on how much funding that school or program has set aside for international students, so funded versus unfunded programs. There may be scholarships that are available. In some cases, there are institutional scholarships. In some cases, there are scholarships that may be available to students from your country. Sometimes those are attached to the government. Sometimes they're attached to corporations or business. Sometimes with those scholarships, there can be caveats to them where, for instance, if you are funding your education through that, you may need to return home after you graduate, or there are certain stipulations that you need to meet, but that funding is available in certain limited circumstances. And then, you know, there's things like assistantships or other work opportunities to work on campus while you're attending to be able to defer the cost of your education. Loans, you know, can be a little bit challenging for international students. Typically in the United States, the lenders that have loans available for international students, you need a co-signer who's a US citizen or permanent resident. But there are some options available for there. And then at the undergraduate level, in certain limited cases, there may be need-based financial aid available to international students, but I would say it's extremely rare that it meets the full cost of attendance, right? So it's usually going to be cases where you're kind of looking at multiple sources of funding to fund your education. And then if you want to go to the next slide. So in terms of the timeline, just real quick, I think the biggest way that I can sum this up is just say that the timelines vary widely from institution to institution and program to program. So your best bet is really just to check with the individual programs that you're interested in, go on the websites, and when you're looking on the university websites, make sure you're looking at the specific program that you're going to be applying to. This really applies more for the graduate level, but like I said, there can be wide variation even within an institution in terms of what the application deadlines are. At the undergraduate level, there is a little bit more standardization. You may hear terms like early decision and early action, which essentially are programs that allow you to apply earlier and get your admission decision earlier. In the United States, typically, like for instance, if you're looking at a fall 2024 admission, you would apply in the academic, you know, year prior to that. So your final year of high school, you would be applying. And typically, for early decision, you may see deadlines around October or November. Early action can be around that time or a little bit later. And then you'll see a lot of deadlines for schools, typically around January 1st, January 15th. But some schools have rolling admission. And so you can actually apply at any point in the year for admission to that institution. So the biggest takeaway here is to just check with the individual schools that you're applying to for what the specific deadlines are. And I will turn it back to Judy to tell you a little bit more about the educational experience.
Awesome, thank you. So now we're at the last section of our presentation. And here we are probably right now, you guys are probably at stage 1. We are in the admissions process, and you could be in the research phase of the admissions process, is really the beginning of this journey. After you get in, then that's where all the fun begins, and life continues. You get to school, you get to go to your program, get to learn what you set out to learn, and then you prepare for graduation. And there's a whole set of things that you might be considering at that point too. Great, you have arrived at the US to pursue an excellent education. You've learned a lot. You've got a lot of academic experience, research experience, work experience. What do you want to do with that experience? Do you want to stay in the US to work for a few years to gain that experience and then come back to your home countries? Or do you foresee a longer journey? Maybe if you're going to a master's program and you want to pursue further studies to do a PhD and then postdoctoral, or maybe you want to stay in the US for a longer time. So I know we're at just stage 1 admissions process, but we want to take this opportunity to zoom out a little bit and give you this broader view of kind of where this journey will take you and some of the things, and we'll give you a few factors to consider, especially around when you're in school and thinking about career development. So yes, you are going to the US, you're getting great educational experience. What do you want to do with that experience? For some people, it's maybe going down a more academic pathway with their career. Maybe for others, it's a bit more industry and professional experience. But one thing that we want to share is that in the US, universities have a lot of dedicated support to help you with career development. Most universities will have at least one career service career center. In many cases with large universities, they will have multiple career centers. So they'll have one for the business school and another career center for the engineering school, or even more. And that's just a free resource you get as a student. And so these are career advisors that do a host of things. They will have one-on-one appointments with you. They will do advising. If you have any questions around how you want to take your career, you can ask them. They'll do resume reviews. They can do mock interviews. These career centers will also oftentimes host events, anywhere from big career fairs where employers will come to campus to network with you directly, or they'll have smaller events where maybe it just focus on a particular industry. And they will also be making direct connections with employers that will come to your campus oftentimes to recruit students like you. So this is a great benefit of universities in the US. In other countries, sometimes they have these services, but oftentimes it's a bit more limited. So that's the career services piece. Take advantage of that when you're on campus. And then depending on your program, sometimes your professors will actually be a great source for career advice as well, because maybe your professor is on an academic path that you want to follow, that they're also great. Or you have professors, say at an MBA program, that actually used to work at a company or used to consult for private companies, then they also have industry experience that you can consult. So that's career services. And while you're in school, you might be thinking about gaining practical work experience. So this could be working on campus, this could be having internships, this could be being involved in co-op programs. So co-op programs, that's a bit more university and program specific. There are some universities where they require you to have practical work experience as part of your academic requirements to graduate. And this can happen at both the undergraduate or the grad level. So this is where the internship is not just an add-on that you do on the side, but it's baked into your academic experience. And sometimes you'll also have mentorship programs. This can be from student services, or sometimes this can be from career services, where they will set up a mentorship program to connect you with alumni in industry that you're interested in. So you can take advantage of that. Next, student organizations. So oftentimes, maybe especially at the undergraduate level, when you think about student organizations, maybe you're thinking about something a bit more social. So maybe a fraternity, or maybe like the Frisbee Club, or fun cultural activities. But a lot of student organizations also have a professional focus. And that is a great way for you to network with similar students who are interested in a particular industry. These student organizations usually will also have great connections with their alumni who are already out in the world and working. And oftentimes these student organizations will also have employer connections, industry connections, or they'll have projects for you to actually gain that experience. So if you aren't getting experience from an internship, that's fine. There are all these other ways for you to gain practical experience. So if you want to test out your robotic skills, sure, you're learning that in class, but you want to apply it outside of class. If you're not getting an internship, then you can maybe do that project with peers at a student organization. And then the last two things is, so next is alumni network. Take advantage of all the people that you'll meet during your program. It's yes, you're there for the great educational experience and academic skills, and also you learn from people and you learn with people. And these are people that are going to help you navigate life after graduation as well. The last point here is recruiting events. So I kind of mentioned that when I talked about career services, but this is these are events that typically your career service will put up to bring employers to campus to recruit you directly. So I just talked about all the resources you can take advantage of to navigate your career development and career success. And so here, the last thing I'll touch on is working in the US. So there are many ways for you to gain professional experience in the US. So depending on the school you go to, for most schools that you go to, well, actually, so there are a few things. So the first thing is, if you want to start, you go on campus, you want to start working, great. You can start working immediately on campus. That is, you don't need additional work authorization for that. That's a great way to start connecting with your campus, earning a little bit of money, but also just gaining work experience in the US. For most schools that you go to, after 1 year of your program, you can start considering off-campus internships on something called CPT. And CPT is a work authorization that's just tied to your F1 visa. Obviously, if you are in a PhD program where part of your financial package is you are an assistant professor or assisting, or you have an assistantship, then that kind of work would be part of, you would have been doing that already. For internships over the summer, so you can work so after your first year, you can start working off campus. This can be during the semester when you are going to classes, or you can also do internships over the summer. So do a summer internship. After that, after you have graduated and if you want to work in the US, you can also do that. So all F1 students, you are eligible to apply for OPT. So this is something that gives you 1 year of work authorization to work in a role in a field that is connected to your field of study. If you are studying in a STEM field, so this goes back to what Allison was talking about earlier at the very beginning about STEM designated programs. If you are in a program or a major that is STEM designated, in addition to that 1 year of OPT, you get a 2-year STEM extension. This means that you would get up to 3 years of work authorization in the US. Again, it has to be tied to your major. But that's work authorization that your employers don't have to sponsor you. You don't have to deal with the lottery. You just get to take advantage of that to work. Obviously, after that, there are other pathways if you want to continue living and working in the US. After that, a typical pathway is the H-1B work visa. And there are a few other pathways as well, like the O visa, the EB visa, and more. So this is just an overview to say that for a lot of you, going to school in the US is, yes, great for the education piece, and also you want to apply the education to professional experience in the US. And there are many pathways for you to start gaining professional experience on campus while you're a student and after you've newly graduated. So with that said, I know between Alice and I, we've gone through these 3 sections. It was a very high level overview, but we hope it was helpful. If you are curious for more, we have a free interactive masterclass on the US college admissions process. So it'll go through everything that Allison and I talked about today and more. So if you are interested in taking the course, you can scan the QR code. Also, you will have the presentation emailed to you afterwards, so you can find it there. And the way to get the course for free is to use the coupon code here that we have in the Coral. So this is really a course that will take you through the whole entire process, kind of an expanded version of today's webinar. But if you are looking for other resources, the Interstride website has a lot of other tools. If you go to interstride.com/blog, you will get blog articles, helpful databases, scholarship finders, and more. So with that said, we are happy to answer any questions and hear your feedback.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Alison and Judy. You have really done so much. You have really done well by giving us these insights. I kind of have a couple of questions from some of the students who want to apply for undergrad. So I don't know if they are here, but from the question that I'm getting from them, I could just have to ask, probably you can just throw more light on that, and then this will assist them, even if they are not here, when they listen to this video, they'll be able to get information on that. So some of them kind of asked me some questions about how you can actually gain scholarship as an undergrad, because I kind of don't have much information on that. So I was wondering, someone who want to apply for undergrad from any of the African countries, is there a scholarship program? Because I know that those of us coming for graduate school, like myself, I came on assistantship, graduate assistantship, but this is not applicable to undergrad. So is there any opportunity for the undergrad who are international students to gain scholarship that can help them to offset some of their tuition fees?
Yeah, I can help with that. So yeah, at the undergraduate level, it really depends on the institution what type of financial aid is available. But I would say in general it is very limited. And the reason for that, I mean, it's complicated, but it really just has to do with the cost of attendance in the United States. And also just in general, the types of aid that are available to international students. So, for students who are US citizens and permanent residents, there's more options because obviously they have citizenship. But for students who are from outside the US, it tends to be more limited. So there's 2 kind of, main types. So some schools will have merit scholarships, which tend to be awarded based on your academic record. And that can mean a lot of different things. Typically, it has to do with the grades in high school, what classes they took, sometimes standardized testing, sometimes there's additional essay requirements, et cetera. So I would say in general in the US, I think there's a trend, at least I'll say definitely for the more selective schools, there's a trend toward moving away from merit scholarships. And that's not just for international students, that's for all students. Because the most selective schools are really getting those applications already anyway. So there's not much money around for merit scholarships. The schools that do have merit scholarships tend to be the ones that maybe are sort of more mid-tier or maybe not as well known, but sometimes they do have great options, particularly if they're trying to diversify their student body. So they may have some type of scholarships available, and that really holds true for both merit and need-based aid. So that's merit scholarships. There's also sometimes there's need-based aid available for international students. It is limited, however. So again, it really depends on the school. I'll just kind of introduce some different terms to you. So you may hear the terms need aware or need blind, which has to do essentially how a student's ability to pay for their education or the types of financial aid that they might get, how that plays into the admissions process. So what I mean by that, to give you an example, so a school that is need blind in the admission process is reviewing the student's application and they're admitting them based solely on their academic credentials. Or, and maybe, an essay or personal requirements, things like that. Which sounds great, right? The issue with that is that you can envision a scenario where for an international student, they're admitted, they're academically admissible, the school is excited to admit them, and the student is excited to be admitted. However, if the student needs financial aid, then they're in a bind, right? Because then they have an admission offer and they have to figure out, how am I going to come up with $80,000 a year to pay for my education, right? And so it can easily create a scenario where it's like, we used to say, where you're, it's like being invited to a dinner, but you're not allowed to eat anything, right? It's a little bit cruel. So you may hear that term. So there's need blind, and then there's also need aware, which means a student's ability to pay for their education is taken into account when the admissions decision is made. And this is, I would say a good number of schools fall into this category. You really have to look at the individual schools to figure out like whether or not this applies. But essentially that means, again, they're taking into the student's ability to pay for their education. So they're requiring financial documents at the time the student applies. And then they're taking that into account when the admissions decision is made. So I say all of this to say, because it's not directly related to scholarships, but I do think it helps to kind of understand how those funding decisions are made. So there are some schools that do have limited need-based aid for financial students, for international students. I would say ones that have full need-based aid available tend to be the ones with sort of the largest endowments, and the ones that a lot of students have heard of, like the Ivies. But because of that, they're also extremely, extremely competitive, right? There are other schools that have need-based aid for international students that maybe offer some type of support, but are not going to offer full funding. So they may be able to give the student $15,000 or $20,000 a year, but then they're going to ask that the student's going to supplement that from their side with with their own funding or potentially other sources of funding, right? So it's very confusing, to be honest. It's, especially if you're coming from outside the US, I wish it was easier. Yeah. The best thing that you can do is really check with the individual schools, and there's all kinds of resources out there as well for you to be able to sort of narrow down which schools have financial aid for international students.
Yeah.
The only thing add, I know this is, I think this is an important topic. I'll add that the Interstride blog has a lot of articles around this topic, around what's the difference between need blind versus need aware, and what's merit-based versus need-based. So we have a lot of resources there. We also have our Interstride scholarships finder, which is a database of about 160 plus schools and their financial aid, assistantship, scholarships available to international students. So you can take a look there. And then the last thing I'll do is share very quickly, just to give color, because I think it's very important, Allison, that you set the expectation that financial aid and financial support for international students is limited, just to set the expectations. But it's possible. It's just you can't expect it for everybody. But I'll just share, my best friend from international school, she's from Taiwan. She went to Knox College, which is a liberal arts college in Illinois, and she applied for financial aid. So she sent in an application and she got it. She got about, I think, $20,000 or $30,000. So again, that doesn't cover 100% of her cost, but it covers enough that her family can support her. And then there are other cases where, some students, some friends and family, they've applied to big state schools like the University of Massachusetts at Amherst or the University of Washington. They did not apply for anything. They just applied to the school. But when they got their acceptance offer, the school just automatically in the offer gave them money. So again, it's about maybe $10,000, but they didn't have so some schools, they don't have a separate scholarships application. Just when you apply, if they think your scores are high enough, they will give you an incentive kind of to accept their offer. So $10,000, $20,000 real money, but again, doesn't cover the full cost of your tuition. Where I went to school, Tufts University, the school is a bit more, richer than a public school. And so I know a handful of students, for example, a friend from Myanmar, he got full cost. He got financial aid to cover his entire cost of tuition. But again, that's more limited to private universities that have a bit more money. So I'll pause there.
Thank you so much. Probably what I'm gonna do is I always advise some of these young folks who are applying for undergrad to connect with at least so far in our record, Eduafric has actually assisted one undergrad so far. Last year, he came in here in the summer of 2023, and he was admitted to Oakland University in Michigan. So, and he came without funding. He has about a deficit of about 33,000 K. Then I think he came in, and within a couple of weeks, he came in. He was able to get some on-campus jobs that assisted him in offsetting these bills. So, and currently he's doing well. He's in his second year. Yeah, and probably most times I have to just link them up to the young man to actually tell them how he was able to navigate all of this. And so then one more question that are also coming from these young folks who are applying for undergrad. After taking this one, probably we'll now look at people, because there are some people who are raising their hands in the in the uh, in the chat room. So one more question that baffles me so much is about how these young folks can establish home ties in terms of when they are going to embassy for their F1 visa. Because I know that those of us who are applying for graduate schools, most of us, we have job experience, and then we have, some of us kind of have landed properties. We've worked for many years. We've gained some money, and we're able to make investment. And I know that some of these things serves as a home tie when applying for your F1 visa. So for the young folks who have not actually gotten any work experience, they are not working in any organization, and they're just young, because in our country, I am coming from Africa, I'm coming from Nigeria, so I know how things happens there. When you finish your high school, you cannot gain a job that can give you a good amount of money unless you get your degree. So these young folks who do not have a strong job that can give them the kind of finance or the kind of thing they can use to establish a home tie, what do you suggest? I learned, Alison, you said you've traveled and you've had a lot of experience with international students. So how do you think these young folks can establish a home tie that can allow them to get their F1 visa when they attend their visa interviews.
Yeah, okay, so let me just make sure I'm understanding the question correctly. So basically the question's about kind of establishing like proof of funding for when they're applying when they're going to their visa appointment. Is that correct?
Yeah, proof of funding and at the same time home ties. I mean, what makes them connected to their home? Because some of these from the immigration laws, it's expected that you return after your studies. So
Right, okay,
how
yeah.
can they establish this to convince the visa officer
Right,
that
right.
they are gonna, they have a strong home ties?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And you know, I've heard many anecdotes from students over the years, and I've heard all kinds of crazy stories about things that have happened with
Yeah.
applying for visas, unfortunately. You know, and of course, you know, there are certain you know, standards that have to be, you know, met, and things that need to be brought with the student when they go to the appointment. You know, and there's also, unfortunately, a little bit of an element of variability as well. It just depends on, you know, maybe the time of year, the number of appointments that they have, the person, the counselor officer that they actually get. Like, you know, I think at the undergraduate level, I mean, the main thing that they, you know, want to see, obviously the student has to have the form I-20, which is issued by the institution that they're going to be attending. And then, you know, they're going to be asked a series of questions, you know, by the officer, which really range. Honestly, like I've heard appointments being super quick. I've heard of them being super long, like where they just ask an insane amount of questions. And you know, I don't really, I'm not sure what advice so I sort of have to deal with that. I think that the best thing I can share is to just sort of be prepared, you know, and just and be honest, right? And about, you know, the students' intentions about why they are interested in studying in the United States and what their plans are after graduation. Because essentially, if you look at it from the United States perspective, you know, I mean, there's a lot of things that they sort of want to make sure, but they want to make sure that the student has enough funding to be able to cover the cost of education, because what they don't want are students coming to the United States and then sort of running out of money, and then, you know, they're not able to continue their studies, and then they're here, you know, and their visa is, you know, runs out or whatnot, and then they're in, you know, essentially in the United States illegally, right? And they also, you know, want to know that what their intentions are and that they're going to sort of abide by the rules. So, Judy, I don't know if you have any more insight on that. I mean, I wasn't, I didn't serve as a DSO at my previous institutions. So we had someone else at the school who was more in touch with the students directly, before and after their visa appointments. But, you know, those are some of the common themes I saw that kind of come up.
Yeah, and one resource I will share is I'll have Sharon share this with you. We have a webinar recording that we did a few months ago, and it was with a firm called Argo Visa. And essentially, it was a webinar with two former U.S. consulate officials who used to process F1 visas, and they gave an overview of what to look out for, how to prepare. And I think the Q&A part was also really insightful, because there were students asking precisely these kind of questions, like how do I establish a home tie? Or if I've already been denied once, what can I do about this? So I think that recording will be a really good resource for everyone. And also the other part is, you know, I think one, be truthful. So if you are young and you don't have property, you don't have a job yet, then what is truthful is this is your home. You grew up here. This is your family. How can you build a convincing story that's based on the truth? That's the most important that they stress a lot in that webinar. And then secondly, to understand that there are a lot of things that are unfortunately outside of our control. Even in that webinar, some of them did say, you know, it is very much up to consular officers' individual discretions. I was very lucky because I'm from Taiwan. And so Taiwan and a lot of East Asian countries, visa denial rates are rather low. In Europe, F1 visa denials are rather low. For a lot of African countries, the visa denial is much higher. And so it goes into things where you can be entirely truthful, but if a consular officer that's in their second year on their assignment, they don't understand that, or even in the webinar, they said sometimes, honestly, it's about have they had coffee? Did they get lunch that day? So do whatever you can to be prepared, review that webinar, and understand that there is always an element of just surprise.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think you have a very wonderful insights there. We will make sure that they get some of those resources to have that information. I think we have some folks who are raising their hands. I don't know, and they have some questions they've been typing in the Q&A. I don't know how we're going to do this. Are we going to bring them forward to ask the question directly, or do we read out the questions in the Q&A, then you can now address them? I'm wondering, can we bring some of them to the stage to speak, to ask their question directly?
Sure. Let me see.
Okay, I think Onyekwere wanted to, someone is raising his hands. Okay, let me allow him to talk.
Yes.
Okay, so can Chukwebuka Onyekwere, can you unmute and speak?
Yeah, okay. Good evening from Nigeria. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, please, my name is Chukwebuka, or Godwin. Please, my question goes like this. Some of us graduate students actually, we were able to secure some partial fundings. I don't know whether this question has been addressed, but if it has been addressed, we'll fine. But if not, please, I will appeal that it be addressed. Now, some of us were able to secure full, partial funding in some schools. Are there channels that can help us to make up with the deficit, so that when we go for interviews in embassies, that can serve as a backup for us? Because some of us, like Mr. Stan said earlier, doesn't have a kind of backup here in the country that can be able to help us in those interviews. Are there opportunities like that? Like, I know of some firms that do give loans, but most of the times those loans serve as a red flag based on what I heard so far. So are there things that can be able to legitimately help us in covering up for the deficit? Thank you very much.
If you, Alison and Judy, you got the question, he was trying to find out if there are other funding bodies that can assist those who are able to secure partial funding. At least I know about Empower and all that. So are there other bodies that can also assist them to cover their deficit? For someone who may have, like, if you can, you may have like a cost of attendance of like 35K, and you are given a funding of let's say 15K, and you have a deficit of about 20K. So how is there an organization in the US that they can actually apply to that can help them in offsetting those ones to help them navigate their F1 visa interview? So you can address, any of you can address the question.
Yeah, I can start. I mean, so I think if I'm understanding correctly, so they're asking about sort of like outside sources of funding, if you sort of need a couple of extra sources to kind of make, ends meet, so that you can, so that you can cover the full cost of attendance. Again, for those types of things, for international students, in most cases, you're going to want to look to sources within your own country or your own continent. And the reason for that just has to do with the fact that most funding sources that are based in the United States. So for instance, even if you just use just sort of general like scholarship finders, on the internet, like a lot of when you sort of read the fine print for those, a lot of those require that you have US citizenship or permanent residency in order to be able to apply for them. So I think, the Interstride resource is a good source. Definitely, use resources in your own country to your advantage. Another place you can go to, you may or may not be familiar with, is Education USA, which has locations throughout the world and in most countries. And they're essentially kind of a branch of the federal government, but they have different sort of levels of support that are available in different countries. In some cases, they have a very big presence and they'll have a big office and multiple counselors. In other cases, it may just be a very small office, but you can definitely check their website to see if they have anything available publicly. You can also contact them, contact your local office. If you just look up Education USA, you can contact your local office. They probably have an email address for your local representative, and their goal is to help students who are interested in studying in the United States, who are coming from other countries, and it's free. So that's a great resource that you can look to. A lot of times, because they're locally based, they're familiar with potentially other sources of funding locally that you can look to if you need a little bit of extra help.
Yeah, Education USA is a great resource. And then Stanley, you mentioned that you are familiar with Empower. So yes, they are a loan provider that's based in the US, that's designed for international students. You do not need a cosigner. Another common one is a company called Prodigy. So they also do international student loans. They're only focused on graduate, not undergraduate. Empower does both. So those two you can take a look at. This is, and then some, just other very common ways of funding that I hear from friends and people I know, is there are people who, their families sell property or sell assets to help cover that cost. Or, I know friends who have borrowed from uncles, aunts, family members. So that's another way. And any kind of there could be other local, other nonprofits within your country or continent that is, have this mission of sending students outside. So there could be scholarships there. Your country may or may not have scholarships as well. So for instance, in Taiwan, I think the government has scholarships for people going abroad for graduate studies. They don't have that for undergrad, but they have that for graduate studies. So those are some ways. And I think another thing actually to point out is when you get say you have a scholarship or say you get a financial aid package, many cases you can actually email them back and said, thank you so much. Can I negotiate, not in those words, but you can actually negotiate your scholarship or financial aid package. That's not a set number. They give you that number. You can actually ask, hey, can I get more? They might say no, but it's worth asking. And I know people who've gotten more. So that's another option. I'll just share one anecdote, and this is just to be realistic, is, I have a friend who was an international student in the US. She got into Duke Law School, so one of the top law schools in the country. She also got a scholarship, which is very rare at the law school level. Even after that scholarship, she had a deficit, and she had 2 months to come up with that deficit, and she was not able to do that. So what she did, and she negotiated, they couldn't go up. So in her case, what she did was she decided to go home and earn some money and maybe apply again in the US in a year or two. What happened was, in a year or two, she was no longer interested in the US and she just went to the UK. And she's very happy with that choice. But just want to share an anecdote as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Judy. That last option you gave, I actually used it and it worked for me because, yeah, when I was in Nigeria, when I got my graduate assistantship, I got a 10 hours graduate assistantship. But, in the US, as an F1 student, we are allowed to work 20 hours. So I kind of sent an email to my department chair. Please, can I get extra 10 hours? Because the 10 hours cannot be enough for me. So they actually told me that as soon as you arrive, you can get an on-campus job. We can also give you more opportunity for you to cover the other 10 hours, which will give you more funding. So as soon as I arrived, I was able to get an extra 10 hours. So I worked for 20 hours. And then in my second year, the department gave me complete 20 hours. So I think that option works very well. You can actually negotiate and ask for more. Yeah, so I don't know. There are some questions in the Q&A. One of the questions here says, I have an MSc from UK. Do I need to write GRE for PhD in the US?
I think, yeah, I saw maybe one or two or three questions that were kind of similar that were just asking about sort of like standardized testing requirements. And what I would just say to that, I would just kind of reiterate what we mentioned earlier is that it really depends on the school. Like, unfortunately, there's no sort of blanket requirement if you have, you know, this degree or this credential that you won't need to take a standardized test or you won't need to show proof of English language proficiency. Like, unfortunately, it's really on a case-by-case basis. And that holds true for, for any of the graduate standardized testing, but also for English language proficiency testing as well. So I would just encourage you to check out the programs that you're interested in, go to their website and see what their requirements are. And, most likely they're probably, in a lot of cases, they may not have all the specific information on there for international students. So your best sort of call to action in that case is to just reach out to the program directly and ask. Unfortunately, there's no real shortcut. That's kind of what you have to do, because there is no sort of standardization.
So I think Sharon has been doing well to reply most of the questions in the chat box, but there is a question that I think she has not addressed here, which I may have to read out so that you can actually address it. So the question goes like this: says, please, I have BSc social change communication. Is it possible to switch to a STEM course, specifically like MSc in cybersecurity or computer science? So this person is trying to know, he or she has an undergrad in social change and communication, which is like management course or something like that, or arts course. She wants to know, he or she, I don't know whether it's a male or a female, but then wants to know whether he can actually switch to STEM course in the application for a graduate studies.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's maybe the student is asking about, like, in general, so when applying to sort of master's degrees, like, are there any requirements that you have to have a certain credential, like in a bachelor's degree or something like that? And I would say it really depends. But I mean, typically, I would say most schools in the United States for master's programs, they don't necessarily require that you have a degree, you have a bachelor's degree in a particular area. I mean, there's some exceptions to that. But there are students who will change sort of tracks all the time. So sometimes you'll see students with a bachelor's degree in an area of the liberal arts, and then they'll decide for graduate school they want to switch maybe to studying business. In some cases, if you're looking, for instance, at like a science program or a technical program at the master's level, if you don't have an undergraduate degree in that area, they may require that you take some additional coursework or have some work experience or some other type of they may have some specific requirements about what you need to do before you apply to the graduate program. And that just has to do with obviously the nature of the graduate program being more specialized, and they want to make sure all students are kind of on the same page before they start their studies. So again, it really depends on the program. So I would just, if there's particular master's programs that you're looking at in that area, I would just reach out to those to those programs directly and those admission officers, and they would let you know whether you need a particular bachelor's degree in that area, or if there's courses you can take, or if there's no requirement for that.
Yeah. Okay, Judy, you have something to say?
Just the technical terminology is, maybe this is more of a US thing, but there's something called a post-bac. And so in Allison's case, maybe there's a cybersecurity program that says it doesn't matter what undergrad maybe they'll say it doesn't matter what undergrad you did, but you must have proficiency in these areas. And they can test that proficiency by seeing the coursework that you took in your undergrad, or they can test that proficiency by the standardized testing, or they can see that proficiency because you actually have worked in cybersecurity. Like, you know, because I actually don't know what you worked in. So you say your undergrad with social change, but who knows? Maybe you did social change at cybersecurity company, just on the non-technical level. So maybe that's another area. So I think the thing, especially in the US, is to Allison's point, one, understand what are the actual minimum technical requirements, because that you can't really change. And then beyond that, the US has so many qualitative elements in the application. They have so many recommendations they ask you for. They ask you for so many essays, and that's another opportunity for you to, if you meet the requirements, really tell that story of why you're making that change and why you're a good fit for that change, and why, you know, if you have a different background, you'll still catch up and be a good fit in that program. And I think that's one way the US is very different, where they really give you so much space to tell your story and they want to hear your story. Unlike maybe in other countries like the UK, where your personal statement is just, I love biology and I've been studying biology, I've been working in biology, that's why I want to do biology. In the US, you can tell a story of like, I studied biology, but then I fell in love with entrepreneurship and that's why I'm doing an MBA. So take advantage of the essays.
Typical example of this is currently I have a student here. He's currently in the US, and he did a management course and in undergrad and also in postgrad in the master's degree. And then he applied for a PhD in cybersecurity. So, and he was actually admitted. But in the admission letter that was given to the student, which I saw, they told him that there are some basic courses in undergrad and also in masters that he would do. So he will not go and start the PhD direct. So he would kind of do masters for like 1 year. In the admission letter which I saw, he said you have 2 semesters to do these courses. There were courses that they listed there in order to prepare him to do a PhD in that area. So this is a typical example of someone who can actually switch, and this is what I've seen based on what I've seen so far. So you can actually do that. And I believe when the student was applying in the SO, in the statement of purpose, the student actually made some, because I read the statement of purpose, I reviewed it. So the student was like, when he did an internship in a local government, he was able to see the need for him to learn more in the tech area, because he saw a gap in most of the local governments, and then he wants to learn the technological aspect of, so he wants to learn, do this cybersecurity to be able to fit in and fill in those gaps. So I think you can actually do that in your statement of purpose. Whatever you've written there will help you to make them to understand that you actually have a reason for transitioning from your current state to another state. Okay, so let me check another question that Sharon did not address. Okay, I think we have, okay, this question says, I have HND, mechanical engineering from Nigeria, Polytechnic. Yep. Can I get admitted to an MSc? Yeah, I think HND is Higher National Diploma. I know about that. I don't know. Alison, are you conversant with HND certificate from Nigeria? Have you heard about it before?
HND, is that
Higher National Diploma. I'm from Nigeria. I can explain to you. You know, in Nigeria we have universities and then we have polytechnics.
uh-huh.
So yeah, so the polytechnic award
I
higher
see,
national
yeah.
higher national diploma, but then universities award degree diploma. So this person is trying to know if he can use, because in Nigeria, we have a kind of discrepancy. If you have a HND, that is higher national diploma, you cannot use it to get a master's degree in Nigerian university, except you do a kind of postgraduate degree.
Right, okay.
Like 1 year postgraduate degree.
Yeah.
So this question kind of, in my own understanding or in my own experience, people with HND can gain admission to MSc. At least at Northern Illinois University, I have one case that I know about of a student who has this higher national diploma who gained admission to do MSc here at NIU. So I don't know if you have more thing to say about that, you can add.
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, there's a lot of countries that have a system like that where there's a polytechnic system or technical sort of element. And I really think policies are going to vary, but I would probably err on the side of saying that most likely for the United States, they would not accept that the credential. You would probably need additional schooling. But again, I'll just go back to it really depends on the program. So I would just encourage you to, if there are programs in the US that you're looking at, like just reach out, tell them your situation and say, would you accept this credential or do I need additional schooling?
All right. I think, Judy, you have something to say?
Not on this topic.
Okay, good luck. You are
Yes,
raising your hands.
certainly. Okay, good luck and go first.
Yes, I was hoping that Interstride could also mention talk about their services. I think the audience would also like to know how Interstride is facilitating their transition to higher education.
Okay, Alison, you have something to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to answer the last question that the young man asked about HND.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah, Stanley already said that we have a student here completing her master's. In fact, she already completed, and she came to Northern Illinois University using her HND. So I believe what she did was she combined her national diploma with her HND, and then she did a WES evaluation, if you know what a WES evaluation is. So the WES evaluation now kind of like presents your HND and your ND and make it to be equivalent to a bachelor's degree, a 4-year bachelor's degree. So I can give you more information about that after the meeting. Just reach out to me and I will probably connect you with the students in question. But it is possible for sure.
Okay, so there's a question, Judy. There's a question that Goodluck asked. He was trying to find out what resources is available by Interstride in assisting young people from international students navigate the process and come to US for their studies.
Yeah, so Interstride, as a company, we're a tech company. We work directly with universities to help them support their international students. But in terms of the resources that are available to prospective international students like you guys who are thinking about going to undergrad or grad, there are a few resources that are free for you. So the first one is the masterclass that we just shared earlier, which you have the coupon code for. That's an interactive course that takes you through the entire process from how to research to how to apply and like how to accept. So that's the course. I think I've mentioned the blog. So the blog, we have free articles. We also have a scholarships database that I also mentioned. We actually also have a university ranking page, which we rank the top 100 universities across a few different criteria, including top universities that produce students who then go on to earn a green card, or top schools that have students working on OPT or STEM OPT. So that's another resource. And all of that can be found on our website. The last resource I will share is we have a tool for you to connect directly with existing international students and alumni at US institutions. So so on that front, we are partnered with about close to 10 universities. So you can go to our website and you can actually find, so for instance, one of our partners is Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Florida, and they also have a campus in Arizona. So they actually have selected 5 to 10 international students who are happy to connect with anyone to talk about their educational experience. So you can create a free account and start connecting with existing students. I know across the ambassadors we have on the platform, we have a lot of students from India, a lot of students from China. I know we have a few ambassadors from African countries as well. So that's an additional resource.
Yeah.
I hope that answers the question.
Thank you so much. Thank you. You have done well. I wanted to know now, one of the things we talked about is Sharon and Obina, we discussed about how the students who are participating in this webinar will have access to all of these resources. So how do you get them involved in it? How do you get how can the participants to this program have access to all of this? Because I know that most of those resources are paid for, but you kind of said they are going to have the access to it for participating in this program.
Yeah, so all the resources that I just mentioned are free. The masterclass is free for you guys because you have the coupon code. What Sharon will do is email over a recording of this presentation, the actual slides, and we can hyperlink all the resources that I mentioned. And so the best way is to get this information is one by email, and then actually signing up for those resources, if that makes sense. So it's not actually signing up for the masterclass. Again, it's free. Or if you want to connect with ambassadors that I just mentioned, all you need to do is just create a free account on the Interstride admissions portal, and you can start chatting with international students in the US.
Okay. Thank you so much. So I think you've actually Sharon has done a lot in addressing most of the questions here. And then I've been able to read out all the questions. And I don't have anybody raising up his or her hands for any further question. Does anybody have any further question? Let me check the Q&A. What can I do to secure admission in the U.S.? Oh, this has been treated. All right, so I think we've been able to address all the questions we have at hand. I kind of want to end by thanking the Interstride for bringing up this to us. We are happy that we have gotten some new information regarding applying for programs in the US. And specifically, we have gotten a lot of information regarding undergrad because Eduafric, we kind of focus more on the graduate students, and a lot of undergrad come to ask questions, and I was like, oh, I do not have much information about undergrad because all of us at Eduafric, all the board members, we are all in different countries. We are not in our home countries at the moment. Most of us are in the US, some of us are in Europe, some are in Asia. So we all came on full scholarships. So, and these scholarships is what we have information about how to secure. So there's a general saying that you cannot give what you don't have. So because we actually know how to navigate the process of getting a graduate admission and graduate scholarship, we kind of said, okay, let's come together and create Eduafric where we can give back to the society and assist our young people out there who do not have the information. So I'm happy that Eduafric has collaborated with Interstride that focus more on in undergrad. So which means our followers who are undergrad can now get resources on how they can navigate the process of getting undergrad admission. And we are happy to collaborate with you guys. We hope that in the in the days to come, we will organize more programs and even plan kind of a conference, because I think we need some of these things to sensitize our people. And then thank you so much, Judy and Allison and Sharon, for being here with us. I don't know, going further, we look further to more discussion with you guys, and then having more communication with you guys. I don't know if you have any other thing to say before I make the final announcement.
Just thank you.
All right. Thank
Thanks,
you,
everyone.
Interstride. Thank you, Allison. Thank you, everyone, for your participation.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, we are hoping at Eduafrik that very soon, because part of the things we are doing at Eduafrik is to give back to the society. And one of the things we want to do, just a little thing we want to do this time around, is to kind of offer some kind of a scholarship or kind of a travel allowance to some of our colleagues or some of our people who got their visas to come to US, because we know how difficult it is coming to US. So very soon, is an announcement that I'm making. We are going to roll out within the couple of weeks. We're going to roll out the applications process for those who may want some little kind of assistance, financial assistance from Eduafrik. So we are going to offer that very soon to some people from Africa. So you're going to apply. So next week or within weeks to come, we will roll out the application, and then you will fill in the form and we evaluate it and we select those we want to give the scholarship to. It's just a little token we want to give out to those who have struggled, because we know it is not easy to get visas. So we just want to use it to encourage them in their travel. It's a kind of a travel allowance we want to give out to them. So all our followers, look up to our website. Very soon, we're going to roll it out and we're going to publish it on our social media. Look out, apply, and then if you are selected, you are lucky, you will get some funds from us. And I would like to let you know that the money is not coming, it's coming from the pockets of the board of we have about 6 board members, and we kind of want to give out these funds from our own personal efforts. So it's a way we are trying to give back to society. So all our followers, you just keep an eye on our social media. Very soon we're going to publish the application process, and then you can fill in the forms and submit. We evaluate it. If we select you, you will get some cash gift from us. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Judy.
you.
And thank
Have
you
a great
everyone for
weekend.
your participation.